Hi, I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Today, crisis in the Central African Republic. What should be done to help a nation some are calling the world's newest failed state? Our digital producer Malika Villar is here looking out for your feedback. As always, Malika, for this show, we actually asked our online community, what questions do you have about the Central African Republic? Then what happens?
Well, ask and you shall receive. We actually got more questions than we did comments, which is a little bit unusual.
Sure.
But the prevailing question was, why has this country been ignored? There's definitely that sentiment. Uzazu here on Twitter sums it up. He says, why isn't Central African Republic on the agenda of developed countries? Is it because there's no strategic importance? Now, that's one question. We want to hear your questions or your comments for those of you at home. So join the conversation with hashtag AJStream.
Now, already with us in the studio as part of our conversation, we have MAGLOIRE Kolisso, and MAGLOIRE is a former government spokesman for President Francois Bozize, who was ousted by rebels earlier this year. He was afraid for his safety, so MAGLOIRE left the Central African Republic and is now seeking asylum in the United States. MAGLOIRE, it's great to have you in this show, and we're looking forward to hearing from you very soon.
Okay.
So before we dive into today's topic, here's a look at some of the Twitter hashtags we're following on the stream. You can read more about all of these stories on our website at stream.aljazeera.com. It's been called the Forgotten Crisis. Citizens in the Central African Republic, or CAR, continue to face what human rights groups say could amount to war crimes. In March, a rebel-led coup ended President Francois Bozize's decade in power, adding to the country's long history of political turmoil. Since then, the now disbanded Seleka rebels and self-defense groups have been blamed for hundreds of deaths and the displacement of thousands. Some are being targeted in part for political and sometimes religious differences. 8 groups who have reported abuses, including summary executions and rape, use of child soldiers, are continuing their call to step up international intervention. On Tuesday, the UN decided to send more troops to a country many say is a lawless state. So what can be done to end the conflict in the Central African Republic? To discuss these issues, we have Louisa Lombard. She's an anthropologist at the University of California, Berkeley, where her studies focus on the Central African Republic. In New York, John Ging of the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, or OCHA, he's just returned from the CAR. And in Bangui, we have Chanel Boulet, who's a program manager with the International Rescue Committee. So Chanel, John, Louisa and MAGLOIRE, it's great to have you all here in the stream. Looking forward to hearing from you. Let's go to Bangui first of all, though, with you, Chanel. Can you set the scene? This is being described as a humanitarian crisis that the world isn't paying attention to. What's happening in Bangui right now?
In CAR, more generally, right now we're facing a major humanitarian crisis. Currently, 1/3 of the population is facing a major food crisis. More than 400,000 people are internally displaced. The health system is crumbling apart outside of Bangui. All the health facilities don't have any drugs anymore, and all the qualified medical personnel have already left because they fled because of the insecurity. So most of the qualified medical personnel are in Bangui right now, and for the others, most of them are on the field, and when they are unpaid. And yeah, when on top of this, right now, we have more than 70% of the children in Central African Republic that don't attend school anymore, and this for more than almost for 1 year now. So currently the situation is really dramatic. We're trying the best that we can to respond to this. However, the humanitarian community faces the same challenge, which is the lack of funding and attention to this crisis. And this is really hard on us because it's creating a lot of tensions, and the fact that we cannot respond to this crisis the way we want to respond to it. We have basically to choose in a sea of priorities, and this is really heartbroken because we cannot respond to everything. IRC is currently doing a massive food security response in the northern region. We're providing food to more than 18,000 people, but this is only a tiny bit of the food security response that we can do.
Sure,
and
Chanel, I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back to you because we have a whole show to hear what you have to say. I feel like the whole show we could just listen to you, but I'm just going to ask you to take a breath for a moment because, John, you've literally just come back from the CAR. I was watching just a couple of hours ago your press conference at the United Nations. I'm going to quote you here. The atrocities committed against the civilian communities are indescribable. The people in that press room, they were shocked when you said that. What did you mean?
Well, what's happening is such a travesty against the ordinary people. I mean, people are being mutilated, they're being violated, rapes, torture. I mean, it's about terrorizing the ordinary people, the violence that's being committed against communities, and it's having absolutely that effect. Tens of thousands are fleeing for their lives because they just fear. Fear is gripping communities because these armed elements are committing such heinous crimes against the innocent civilians.
No, Magloire, of course, you just heard the word travesty, and earlier we heard crisis. We have a video comment here from someone who also visited CAR. I'd like you to have a listen and then give us your thoughts after.
Okay. I just got back from the Central African Republic, where I traveled with colleagues from the International Rescue Committee who are there to provide food and other services to people. And hunger to me seems to be a major problem right now. People are living displaced near roads or in makeshift structures without any food stocks or possibility to farm. And their children are severely malnourished in many cases. What I saw I would only describe as a serious crisis.
Of course, so you heard in that video comment that there's a humanitarian crisis, but also, of course, there's violence, and you left CAR because of that.
Yeah, I just left 1 year ago because I have a problem with the last president, Aljezeera. So they tried to kill me over there because I was running as an independent candidate.
When you say they tried to kill me, can you explain for our international audience?
They tried to kill me. That means that they tried to kill me for a year. I'll be a free time under prison, under politic prison in Bosambele, with no food, no drink for 2 days. And then after that, I will be released because some of the people organized United Nations Bonica office, organized a march with some people, and they let me free. But they just keep my passport and they let me free, and I have to go every 2 months now to the police station. They keep asking me questions about my opinion politics, about the meeting I'm doing with the opposition, why I'm against the politics of the president, because I've been working with him for 6 years. But because I decided to run as an independent candidate, because it's not democracy, it was with Bozizé. It was a dictator.
So, Magloire, how do you describe the politics in the CAR? Is it just whoever has the most arms wins? What is the atmosphere like there?
The atmosphere, as I told you, is begin since we have the independence. Every 10 years, there is the coup d'etat.
Okay, so you change your administration by a coup.
Yes.
So rebels don't like it after 10 years, another coup, another coup, another coup. How many coups have there been?
6.
Okay.
So actually, the Seleka, they know some part of the Seleka, they're foreign. There is only 3 minority of people, they are national citizens. And they came with the François Bozizé, the last president, is because he didn't get salary or pay. So they come back with some more Jaris from Darfur, Sudan, Mali, and actually now there are more than 50,000. And the rest of the country outside from Bangui, the 16th province, owned by sergeant, chief of rebel, they do what they want, anytime.
All right, so I'm just getting a sense of chaos, okay? And every time you don't like the politics or a group doesn't like the politics, they just overthrow the current, I don't even know, should I call it administration? The current group of rebels who are in power. Let me bring in Louisa here, because I want a little distance so we can understand this as an international community. I have a map up on my laptop right now. So the Central African Republic is orange, surrounded by 6 other countries here. I just want to understand, if we could put it in a nutshell, what's going on right now, Louisa, from your point of view?
Well, could I actually take a step back and speak a little bit about the history of this area? Because I think that's something that we really haven't touched on so far, and it's incredibly important to the state of affairs that we find in the country today. I'll just take that as a yes. And
yes, go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt your flow.
Okay. Well, so let's go back a little bit.
Make it a brief history lesson, though, Louisa.
Okay, so we go back to the early 19th century. This area that has now become the Central African Republic is an incredibly fertile and productive area, home to lots and lots of people. Then we get the area starts being integrated into the trans-Saharan slave trade, loses a lot of people that way. It's a very violent system of production. And then the French arrive, and they, to a certain extent, disrupt some of those trans-Saharan trades, but they institute their own extremely violent modes of production, forcing people to carry extremely heavy loads in the construction of the roads, and on and on and on. And these two sort of broader historical trends depopulated the area quite severely, such that even today it's a very large country, the size of Texas or France, you know, pick your comparison, but with only about 4 million people, and with huge areas of the country that totally escape any kind of centralized control. And what this history has created then is a place where you have a government that is based in the capital, and then you have a really large area, a kind of hinterland, that has very little effective presence of any kind of a state. This makes it very easy to topple whoever is in power, you know, use that sort of the sort of hinterland parts of the country as a kind of staging area, and then it doesn't take much to take power in the capital. And although there have been democratic processes throughout the country's history as an independent country, they have not been substantively democratic, and changes in power have always been either violent or otherwise orchestrated.
All right, so Louisa, that gives us fantastic context. We have questions from our online community, and I want to share the conversation. Magloire wants to jump in as well. Yeah. Let's go to some questions first. Magloire, can you hold that for a second?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, all right, I know, you can do that.
Well, we do have questions. You know, we set up the just a taste of the extent of the humanitarian crisis, but it begs the question. Nasihan on Twitter says, conflict in Central African Republic doesn't make headlines. Why is the world turning a blind eye to this critical situation? And John, I'd pose that to you because, of course, you just, as Femi mentioned earlier, had your press conference. But why is it that people say the world is turning a blind eye?
Well, I'm sorry to say, but there is a fatigue around the world for conflict, and we have so many crises today, from Syria to Somalia to Mali to Afghanistan to Iraq. It's very easy for people to find reason not to focus on a place like the Central African Republic. But from our point of view as humanitarians, the scale of what is happening in the Central African Republic, notwithstanding the fact that there are so many other crises elsewhere, it does require us to focus in, not least because we can stop something terrible from becoming worse. And that is a huge responsibility that we have now for urgent action, and it's up to all of us to try to raise. And again, this program is very helpful to bring about the spotlight. It's a small population, and we can help, and we can help in a real and significant way. And this is what we're trying to now mobilize, is this sort of attention for the help that is needed. The amount of money, for example, that we've appealed for is $200 million. Compare that with $4.5 billion for Syria. Again, relatively modest amount of money, but this is life-saving money that will give people not just the supplies that they need right now, but also the hope to continue their struggle.
Right. Magloire, I know you were sitting on a comment. Go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, I just want to say about the Seleka. Seleka, that's meaning Sango, our last
So this is the group
language.
that's taken over, the most recent group that's taken over?
Yes, Seleka,
Right.
that's mean alliance. Okay, one of the part of the Seleka, it was with Bozeze when he make a coup d'etat against Ange Felix Patasse 10 years ago. So it's because he didn't respect all the engagement he take with those people. So those people just go take and buy some mercenary and join maybe LRA or John Coney also, because it's still over there.
John Coney is, I mean, he's infamous.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing for you. So you are at some point, you were part of a rebel process.
Yeah.
You took power. So what is wrong with people in the Central African Republic that they can't? There's only 4 million of you.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of land. It's beautiful there.
Yeah.
Why can't you get it together?
The problem is the education.
Right.
For example, we are 4.5 million, 75%, 80% of the people, they didn't have education.
Right.
And we, in the capital...
It's all about education. That's why there's coup after coup after coup?
No, it's all about education. For example, when you're running to be a deputy, someone is just coming, just give them food or t-shirts, they just go back to us people. And that's the way they do politics in Africa. For example, the small country like that, we got 150 different politics.
Wow. Okay, my head is spinning. Let's keep this personal and head back to the personal. I'm looking at my computer at a group of women from the CAR who have been living in the school since September.
Yeah.
I'm just going to look at one more picture. These pictures came from Ocha from John's visit just last week. These are kids really being forced out of where they normally live, living in horrible conditions. Chanel, how would you resolve this situation as far as the humanitarian situation is concerned? What needs to happen next? Chanel?
Yes, I'm sorry, there's a little bit of delay, but yes, in my perspective, what needs to happen next is a major support from other countries and from the UN. We here on the ground are trying our best to address all those needs, and also to just conduct our activities to address the most most urgent needs. But however, because we lack means to address it all, we really have a hard time to be helping everybody that needs help. And for now, it's basically more than half of the population of Central African Republic that really needs help. Also, I mean, the conflict is still ongoing. So of course, it's also like there's needs from the international community also to try to stabilize this country, to make it like more functional. But for now, as a humanitarian worker, we're only trying our best to address the needs, but we have minimum capacities to do it. So this is, in my point of view, what can also really help these people is having like good funding and also good support from the humanitarian community for that.
You know, questions are rolling in here the more we talk about this, and one of the questions has to do with the weapons. Louisa, there's a tweet here from Ladadam. He says, with so many guns in circulation, what can be done to retract them? Another person asks, from where do the rebels get the weapons? And one more on Twitter says, we need to look at who's gaining from the ongoing conflicts in CAR, who's selling the arms and the ammunition. Louisa?
Well, I'm afraid that I don't have a definitive answer for you on that one. But we do know that a lot of the people who helped Seleka take power back in March were coming in from Chad, Darfur kind of area. So perhaps, and that is an area that already had plenty of guns there. So I don't know if it's a question of new guns coming in or if there just are plenty there already.
Right.
And that question of disarmament is an extremely difficult one, and I think that it's just a testament to the huge challenges that the country faces right now.
And Magloire, you were reacting as Malika was reading out that question. You were reacting and nodding and smiling in a wry way. Why?
Yeah, I smile because, you know, on that village the people didn't have water and electricity. How the gates, Kalashnikov, sometimes rockets or tank. Very simple. You see France, you can see Sudan, you can see Chad also, because they got interest on that country. We have gold, uranium, oil, and a lot of land. I just leave you imagine.
Sure. See, John, people on the ground say, well, the UN needs to do something, and you're sitting at the UN saying the world needs to do something. So we're kind of stuck here between somebody needs to do something. One of the things that the UN is doing, though, is committing more peacekeeping troops. How effective do you think that might be?
Oh, I think that'll be very effective. We saw in Cagabandoro, which was the second town that we visited, the positive effect of troops on the ground, bringing back security, giving people the stability that they need, the confidence that they need to come back out of the bush into their homes and start to rebuild their lives. No doubt about it that the UN, through the Security Council and the international community, by providing troops, can be very helpful to stabilising the security situation. The international community also has to be more generous, as my colleague from IRC has said. We have a humanitarian appeal. We've got tremendously courageous humanitarian workers on the ground there, working very hard every day, but they're not properly funded. They need more money for the supplies, for the food, for the medicine, to help with education. It's a lot of people doing a lot of things now to help in very practical ways. First and foremost, security, protection, then humanitarian supplies, and then helping people to rebuild their livelihoods and their lives.
Malika.
We just got in a couple of tweets here that I'd like to pull up. This one shows basically what you were saying is the beauty of this country. Laura tweets in, incredibly remote communities in Central African Republic, majority are deprived of basic services, and she includes a tweet in that. But Magloire, there's another tweet here from someone who says, I think it's better for the international community not to recognize a government who takes power by means of a coup. So what comes next? Do we have another coup to look forward to in 10 years? What is the way forward now?
Actually, Ban Ki-moon, the representative of the United Nations, decided to send 4,000 soldiers over there and prepare the election on 2015. But before that, we need to block the government, the actual president, Michel Dutodier, to no travel, block his phone, everything to stop him and tell to the people, some of them are foreigners, they don't speak French, they don't speak Sango, our national language, they speak only some tribal language, Arabic. They're not for this country. So if they're coming over there, they have to tell them to go away and leave that country. Because it's not going to work in. It's never going to work in. And another thing is, they are Muslim. I got some of the part of my family, they are Muslim. We're 4.5 million, only 8% they're Muslim. But most Muslims or Jihadists just come to our country, they push our military Muslim against the Christian, and they fight each other. Could you just imagine if 80% of the Central African people decide now to kill those Muslims?
So we're seeing a religious conflict that we didn't see before.
Yes, that's very important.
Before we go, because this is a very depressing conversation, but it's a very realistic one,
Yeah.
I do want to share a tweet with you. This is what turned me on to doing this program, as well as the fact that this is an unreported story. So Peter Biro is a writer and a photographer, and he works for the International Rescue Committee. I spotted this in my tweet stream a couple of weeks ago, and it says, amid the chaos and escalating violence in the Central African Republic, let me do the reveal for you. Look at these faces and look at the scenery and look how beautiful your country is, Magloire.
Yeah.
So, oh my goodness, I hope for a resolution very soon, but I have a feeling from our conversation today, it's going to be some time. We will continue talking about the Central African Republic and the conflict there in the post-show at stream.aljazeera.com. But in the next AJ stream, it's going to be music to your ears. The Syrian-American composer and pianist Malik Jandali will be in the studio to talk about how he's using his piano to help Syria's children. But right now, we're heading to the post-show at stream.aljazeera.com. Thanks so much for watching. See you online. Hello there, welcome back. This is the Stream's online post show. We're discussing possible solutions to improve security and humanitarian needs in the Central African Republic. So let's get back to the conversation. Magloire, what did you just say?
I just say that it's very good that you have the idea to give us some information about this country, lost country.
When you talk to people and you tell them, oh, where are you from? They ask you where you're from.
They just say that, is there a country?
Really?
Yeah.
They think it's a region?
Yes, they think that Central African Republic is maybe coming from the Middle in Africa. No.
When I tell people I do research in the Central African Republic, they often say, oh, you mean the Congo? And I have to say, no. There is a country called the Central African Republic.
Yeah.
In that slight break, Louisa, between when we finished the main show and we went to the post show, Magloire described you as a crazy woman. Magloire, why did you, we need some subtext to that. Why did you describe Louisa as a crazy woman?
I mean, the crazy woman in a good way, the brave one. Because when I meet her first time in Africa, blonde hair, beautiful woman.
She stands out, right?
Yeah.
Yep,
She's
okay.
just coming, by herself.
And she's in the bush?
She say that I'm going in the bush.
Okay.
On some area, dangerous area that's never been there, Louisa go over there by herself. It can't be possible.
Louisa, you could pick anywhere in Africa. Why did you pick the CAR?
Well, I first went there for work back in 2003. I was working for a research institute called the Small Arms Survey, and then just kept going back there for work a number of times. And over the years, it felt increasingly tied to the country, both personally and then also just because I was really fascinated by it, and I felt like there was a lot there that I didn't understand. And when I was deciding what I wanted to do my PhD on, that was in the end of 2006, 2007. And there was a lot of concern that what was going on in the Central African Republic, the conflict there, might be related to what was going on in Darfur, but nobody really seemed to know. And so it seemed useful to try to go there and do some research and find out a little bit more about the dynamics in a part of the country that had been so little studied.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Well, I love hearing the stories from our guests here. We're also hearing stories from people who had visited CAR, who have other personal instances with it. There's a video comment that I'd like to play for all of our guests here. Have a listen.
But meantime, we also need to scale up the presence of other humanitarian organizations, and we believe very strongly that the UN should take the lead in establishing a permanent humanitarian presence in the major towns outside of the capital, Bangui. With this, they will give some confidence to the population. It will deter the violence that has affected the population from being a level to the population in the same way that it has been done over the preceding weeks and months. And it will improve the level of humanitarian assistance that is being given to this population.
So Chanel, that's a video comment that we received from a member of Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, who visited CAR, and he, of course, echoes what John Ging started our program earlier about the dire humanitarian crisis. But then we have a tweet here from Mustafa. Mustafa says, has the average Centro-African felt any positive impact of the change in regime, he calls it? Has there been any glimmer of hope for residents of CAR? Chanel?
It's really hard for me to say because we're mostly there to help people in need. So obviously we really just focus on this and not taking any political sides to what is happening. But our main concern is that when these political changes happen, it often impacts directly the population. And these are the ones who really suffer from what is happening. So my only concern is that when there are changes, it shouldn't be impacting the population. So I can't really answer this question, but most of our work is currently to help the people impacted by this crisis. Of course, it's really hard for us to take any stance on this.
John, I just know that I know you're with us still from the United Nations, and I just want to make sure that nobody leaves this program without understanding that there are groups roaming around the Central African Republic and what they're doing to the communities and the people there. Can you actually just tell us, and not sugarcoat it, what you've seen and what you know to be the truth?
Yes, what's happening is these armed
right
groups
now,
are
this question's for John. Thanks, Chanel. Go ahead, John.
Yes, these armed groups are travelling around basically raping, torturing, maiming, killing innocent women and children and men, of course. And the objective is to terrorise the populations, and it's working because people are really living in fear for their lives, for themselves and for their families. This is, of course, inflaming different tensions among communities, because there's an element here where they're trying to incite hatred between communities, between Muslim and Christian communities that have lived and cohabited very peacefully for decades and centuries, in fact. But now this is a new dimension to life in the Central African Republic, and it's very frightening for ordinary people.
See, John, you go to the hotspots around the world. This is what you do for your job. So you've seen a lot of terrible situations. So when you look at what's happening in the CAR right now, you know the history of the region. Is it realistic to expect the conflict to end anytime soon?
If it stays on the current trajectory, in other words, if this level of violence continues, if these massacres continue to be committed and the population are terrorized in the way that they are, I'm very sad to say that violence will escalate. And we can see this escalating into something even worse than it is at the moment. However, having said that, it is possible to stop it, and that's why we're appealing for urgent action. People don't want this to happen. It's not in their nature. They're not violent people, and therefore intervention by effective security forces, starting with international engagement, will be something that can prevent the violence spiraling out of even more control than it is at the moment.
Magloire.
So it's not inevitable.
Yeah, Magloire, and Chanel, I hear you there too as well, so I'm going to get you I come back to you. But Magloire, first of all.
Yeah, I would like to say that to end the violence, what's happening in CR is very simple. The new rebel, the chief rebel, he proclaimed himself, Michel Duterte, the new president. He has to pay those rebel for a year, and they can leave. If
he has to pay?
Yes.
Are you talking about bribing them to leave?
Yeah, that's a contract they made together. To coming by coup, they have to pay the money that in the contract that he promised to them. Since he paid them, they'll leave the country. If he doesn't pay, they pay against a population. So they take the woman, they abuse them, the child, they enroll.
So are these Central African republics doing these atrocities, Central Africans doing atrocities to Central Africans? They're doing it to each other?
No, as I told you before, maybe 60% or 70% of the Seleka, they're foreign.
Right. Okay, so Louisa, you're going to jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in here because, as we've been hearing, a lot of really horrible stuff has been going on in the Central African Republic since this conflict with Seleka started back in December of last year. And anything positive that has happened at the same time has to be viewed in the context of this horrible suffering that people have been going through. At the same time, I wanted to just sort of go back in time just a little bit to when Francois Bozize, the former president, was still in power. People were really frustrated with him. He, over the course of his 10 years in power, was ruling in an increasingly, in a way that centralized power in himself and then in his immediate family. And although there were democratic processes, things like elections, they were sapped of their substantive content and just became these kind of technical procedures in which he was able to tighten his control and centralize it around his family. And so one of the challenges as we look forward, and once some security has been brought back to the country, one of the challenges is going to be how can we in the international community support substantive democracy in the Central African Republic, take these kinds of politics into account and not just let these processes turn into technical procedures that whoever is in power can manipulate for his own gain.
Right. Malika.
Well, Louisa just mentioned the challenges, and there's 2 tweets here that I want to share that kind of wrap this up very nicely. Mia Farrow, actress and activist, tweeted into the stream. She says humanitarian aid organizations are desperately underfunded, and she's on her way to CAR as we speak. Levels of violence and brutality are off the charts. On the other hand, we got a tweet from Laura, who is also there. She tweets in, CAR is full of beautiful, friendly people who are surviving in very difficult circumstances, and of course shares one of her photographs with us.
So I have to say thank you to Magloire, to John, to Chanel and Louisa for helping us understand the Central African Republic so much better than we did 40 minutes ago, right, Malika?
Definitely.
And for our online community for asking those really pertinent questions as well. Thank you so much. So what are we doing on the next AJ stream? Talk about gear change. We will be bringing music to your ears. The Syrian-American composer and pianist Malik Jandali will be in the studio to talk about how he's using his piano to help Syria's children. And Malika and I, we're going to see him play tonight. Excited?
Very excited.
Yes, and we will report back tomorrow on AJ Stream. Until then, we'll see you online. Thanks for watching. Take care.